Hello and welcome back to Biochemistry for Health Sciences channel. In the last video, we looked at glycogen. Let's look at glucose in this video and try to specifically answer the question, why is glucose the most important fuel for our cells, for our body? What makes glucose the most important fuel for our body? That's the question we'll try to answer in this video. Glycogen is not a test that we do in the clinical lab. We don't measure serum glycogen, but we do measure glucose. Okay, so remember, glucose is stored as glycogen. So we do measure glucose. There is, of course, serum glucose or plasma glucose, roughly about 105 milligrams per deciliter. We do look at the presence of glucose in urine urinalysis. Okay, so that's one of the tests, is to see whether there is glucose present in urine, and there should not be in a normal case. There should be negative, no glucose present. And glucose is also measured in cerebral spinal fluid for a number of different reasons. CSF fluid is obtained by lumbar puncture. Okay, so it's done by a trained clinician. And the reference range for glucose in the CSF, it's about 2/3 of what you see in the serum. So if serum is about 100, then this is around 65, 66 milligrams per deciliter. One of the most important uses for CSF glucose, CSF, cerebral spinal fluid glucose, is to differentiate bacterial meningitis from viral meningitis. So if there's bacteria in the CSF, they use up quite a bit of the glucose, and the levels can drop down quite significantly, less than 30 or even 20 milligrams per deciliter. So low levels around 20 milligrams per deciliter that suggests very strongly that there might be bacterial meningitis. So the question, what makes glucose the best fuel or the most preferred fuel in the human body? So first of all, let's try to answer the question, what is a fuel from the chemistry point of view? Basically, a fuel is any chemical that has reduced carbons. Okay, carbons with hydrogens attached. So you can see glucose has a hydrogen attached here. Glucose here has a hydrogen attached here, which is not shown. Okay, again, this carbon has a hydrogen attached here, not shown. This carbon has a hydrogen attached, which is not shown. Okay, so this carbon has a 1, 2, 3, so it has a hydrogen attached. Okay, and this carbon has 2 hydrogens attached. So you can see glucose has hydrogens attached to carbons and therefore is a fuel. Okay, so in organic chemistry, a lot of hydrogens are attached to carbons, so that make many organic chemicals potentially fuel molecules, fuel that can give us energy. So what's the structure-activity relationship? What is in the structure of glucose that makes it such a good fuel for the body? Okay, what's in the structure? SAR. That's a very important thing a healthcare professional should always try to question themselves, is when you look at a chemical structure, relate it to its function and try to understand what's so special about a structure that helps it do the function. And it becomes very important as we get into proteins. Okay, Coley has 4 reasons why glucose is the best fuel. So let's look at Coley's evaluation. Okay, reason number 1, why is glucose the best fuel? When you try to get energy from glucose, the best way to get energy from fuels is in the presence of oxygen. You get energy, and glucose is carbons and hydrogens are completely converted into carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide is easily removed by the lungs, water by the kidneys. Okay, so that's nice. Fatty acids too are very good fuels, because not only you give you energy, the byproducts, again, carbon dioxide and water, which can be easily moved by lungs and the kidneys. Okay, we have 2 lungs and 2 kidneys. Nitrogen-containing molecules, nitrogen-rich molecules, amino acids, nucleotides, there we have a slight problem. Not only do you get energy, carbon dioxide, and water, but then we have that nitrogen. We have to deal with that nitrogen, and unfortunately, quite a bit of the nitrogen comes out as ammonia. And ammonia, unfortunately, is very toxic to the brain. So that's one reason why we prefer to get our energy from glucose, and if we don't have that, not enough of that, then we go for fatty acids. So amino acids is only, we don't try to get too much energy into amino acids under normal conditions, but under emergency conditions, that's fine. We do that. Ammonia, by the way, requires to deal with ammonia, we have to incorporate these two organs, the kidneys, the help of the kidneys, and the help of the liver. And we'll see later in metabolism, ammonia in the liver is converted to urea, and that's your BUN test. By the way, we do blood ammonia test too. Besides BUN, ammonia, blood ammonia test is also a very important test. So reason one is byproducts, why glucose is a good fuel. The byproducts of glucose, oxidation, can easily be removed by the kidneys and the lungs. Reason two, glucose has so many hydroxyl groups, water will easily come and get attracted to the hydroxyl and the oxygens. Glucose has excellent water solubility. Okay, so glucose in the serum simply is dissolved in the water part of the serum and travels through the blood vessels very, very, very easily from head to the toe and toe to the head and everywhere in the body. Very easily distribution. This is called distribution. Remember when we always talk about ADME? So D is distribution. Water-soluble chemicals are very easily distributed very quickly throughout the body. So that makes glucose a very ideal fuel molecule because we can send it everywhere in the body because every cell in the body needs energy all the time. Reason number three. All the 200 specialized cell types in our body have the machinery to use glucose. Okay, so they have the necessary enzymes and all that to generate energy from glucose. However, fatty acids or lipids like triglycerides, red blood cells do not have the machinery to use triglycerides or fatty acids for energy. Okay, so red blood cells cannot use lipids. Brain is kind of interesting. There's recent estimates that says about maybe 20% of energy can come from fatty acids, but why not 100%? Here are some reasons that scientists have discovered recently. First of all, to oxidize fatty acids, you need more oxygen. The brain cells may not have sufficient oxygen to do that. Using fatty acids for energy generation can release free radicals. And that can, of course, be very damaging to neurons. And the release of energy is very slow from lipids. And since the brain, the neurons use a lot of energy very quickly, they need energy very quickly, this is a problem too. So clearly glucose is the best fuel for not only the other cells, but for brain and the red blood cells. So this is a very important limiting thing we have to always keep in our mind when we talk about physiology. First of all, energy generation is very critical. We need to generate energy all the time by the 200 different cell types. And the fact that the brain and red blood cells cannot use anything except glucose. Okay, very, very important point to always remember as a healthcare professional. Reason number four, glucose, because glucose has 6 carbons, and we saw that under definitions, glucose exists, more than 99.9% exists in the cyclic form. It has 6 carbons, exists in the cyclic form. Okay, so because it has enough carbons, it can exist in the cyclic form. If glucose, we could have used something else like a 3 carbon sugar, okay, or 4 carbon sugar. These sugars, they have a harder time forming cyclic structures. And why is that important? Because these cyclic structures are less reactive than the non-cyclic structures. Because the non-cyclic structures, you actually have the aldehyde or ketone, but you don't have the aldehyde or ketone in the cyclic structures. So basically the aldehyde or ketones, in this case the aldehyde, this group is masked in the cyclic structure. So why is this important? This is important because aldehydes react with amines, dysfunctional group amines. Unfortunately, proteins are rich in amines. Since proteins do most of the things for cells, this aldehyde glucose will react with the proteins, and the protein shape changes, the protein structure changes, the protein properties change, and the functions of the proteins are going to change. So that's going to lead, since proteins do most things for cells, the cell structure and function is going to change. Okay, and this is a very important concept for diabetes, as well as all the complications that one may get from diabetes, which we'll talk about in a future video. So just to summarize, why is glucose very useful, one of the best fuels for the body? One is the byproducts can easily be eliminated. They don't accumulate in the body. We don't want either carbon dioxide or water or any chemical for that matter to accumulate in the body. Accumulation is toxic. It's not good for the body. Everything has to be in a balance. So byproducts are easily eliminated. Water is very water soluble. Therefore, it can be transported or distributed throughout the body very easily, very quickly. All the 200 cell types, including red blood cells and your brain cells, can use glucose without getting much toxicity of using glucose. And reason number 4 is glucose has 6 carbons, and that allows it to form a less toxic hemiacetyl glucose structure, which will not react with proteins that well compared to the open chain. So that's why we don't have 3 carbon sugars or 4 carbon sugars being used for energy. Instead, we are using a 6 carbon sugar that can form stable cyclic structures. Okay, that's all for now. We will hopefully see you in the next video.